Happy Monday and welcome to July, everyone. It's 21 News Chief Meteorologist Eric Wilhelm here. It's the Valley's most in-depth weather forecast video, weather for Weather Geeks. Lots to talk about this week. It's a holiday week with the 4th coming up on Thursday. We've got a hurricane to discuss this evening, but I wanted to first start with a few words about Saturday's kind of busted severe weather forecast. Now, we did have a lot of caveats in our Saturday forecast. If you watched videos like this late in the week, we talked about it being a conditional threat. A lot of wind shear upstairs, a lot of changing of the wind direction and speed with height. But would we have too many clouds around and therefore a lack of instability? As it turns out, yes. Now, we communicated that, but it kind of gets lost in translation in some circles and on some social media sites, namely Facebook, of course. And so we got a lot of talk back over the weekend from the lack of nasty weather on Saturday. Now, that being said, even though the forecast locally ended up not being great, but both by the computer models and human forecasters, again, even though we did have a lot of nuance in our outlook, there was some severe weather up towards Cleveland and out into central parts of PA. In fact, there was a brief tornado in a cornfield out in northern Ohio, and that makes it the 63rd confirmed tornado in Ohio this year, which is a new record for the state of Ohio for a calendar year, and it's only July the 1st. We've now had more tornadoes this year in Ohio than any other year on record, and we are only halfway through the year. And speaking of halfway through the year, it's a good time to catch up on some statistics. And officially at the Youngstown Warren Airport, almost 5 degrees warmer than the average during the first half of 2024. Precipitation amounts, even though it was a dry June, we're still running a surplus of nearly 2.5 inches. And by the way, that plus 4.8 in the temperature department is good for the second warmest first half of a calendar year on record for our area. So every month so far in 2024 has been warmer than the average. Actually, June had the smallest margin compared to the average. Way above the average in January, February, March, April, and May. June was still 1.5 degrees, but that's a smaller number, of course, than some of the previous months. So it's been just kind of a ridiculously warm start to the year. Now, in terms of rainfall and total precipitation, we've had 2 fairly dry months so far this year, February and June. The rest of the year has been wet by different margins. March was pretty close to average, but April was quite wet. If you remember, early spring was quite a wet time around here. We were, kind of hoping for some dry periods, but as it turns out, later in spring, we got a few too many dry periods, and some yards started to get a little bit brown, and gardens started to get a little bit thirsty late in May, and especially into the month of June. And on this July 1st, what can we look forward to this month? This is the final July outlook put out by the Climate Prediction Center, and they show roughly equal odds of a wetter than average and a drier than average month here locally. I think we're going to oscillate back and forth between stormy periods and pretty benign periods this month. There are stronger precipitation signals elsewhere in the country. In fact, it's a pretty strong signal for dryness in the Pacific Northwest. Remains wetter than the average probably in parts of the upper Midwest and near the U.S.-Canadian border. A lot of those areas have had way too much rain over the last several weeks. Also a wetter than average signal down in parts of the southeast, and some of that can probably be tied to the fact that we will probably see some tropical systems impacting parts of the southern U.S., not only in July, but for the rest of hurricane season as well. Now, temperature-wise, it's a stronger signal from coast to coast. I think for a lot of the month, the heat is going to be centered out here. Big ridge of high pressure right over the Rockies. That being said, even though the heat's core may be right there, it looks pretty hot in most of the country, with perhaps some exceptions in the upper Midwest. But here locally, I do think we'll make it 7 in a row to start 2024 in terms of warmer than average months. In the meantime, if you paid attention to the weather over the weekend, no doubt you saw some coverage of Hurricane Beryl, which explosively developed over the weekend. This was a tropical depression and then a hurricane in a matter of hours. And this is the kind of thing that we're going to see more and more of, I think, in the longer term, but specifically for this season, we're going to see a lot of this, where storms are running over just incredibly warm waters, and they explosively, rapidly deepen and strengthen. And so this is currently a high-end Category 4 hurricane, 125 miles to the northwest of Grenada. This is moving through kind of the central Caribbean at a pretty good clip. It's moving west-northwest at 21 miles per hour. It's probably at peak strength right now, but it's going to try to hold its own for a little while, and it may make landfall somewhere across the Yucatan Peninsula. That's that little part of Mexico that juts out like this. Cancun is right about here. It may make landfall as a low-end hurricane or high-end tropical storm towards Thursday, and into Friday. And then there could be another landfall over the weekend somewhere along the Mexican coast, or perhaps it curls as far north as a landfall in Texas. Will it have impacts on the mainland U.S. weather as we go into next week? It's too early to speculate on that. It's possible, but it's very early in the game to speculate on that. Back here in the lower 48 this evening, we've got severe weather concerns in the high plain states. This is the system that's going to come east and bring us some changes as we head towards midweek. First, an increase in heat and humidity, and then increasing chances for storms by the end of the day Wednesday. But we've got one more fantastic night to get through tonight. What a just 10 out of 10 afternoon we had today, with dew points in the 40s. Air temperatures were in the upper 40s to around 50 at the start of the day today. Maybe not quite as cool tomorrow morning, but close. And then it will be a warmer afternoon tomorrow, but the dew points won't come up during the daylight hours tomorrow. This is going to be just another fantastic, beautiful July afternoon, just warmer than it was today. We made it to the mid-70s today. A lot of us will make it into the mid-80s tomorrow afternoon. Then our warm front pushes in tomorrow night, and tomorrow night will not be nearly as cool. With those dew points coming up, we'll probably see lows in the 60s tomorrow night and into Wednesday morning. But any shower and thunderstorm activity is likely to hold off until pretty late in the day Wednesday as this cold front approaches. Let's back up this animation to right around sunset Wednesday evening. This is probably our best chance during Wednesday of seeing some wet weather. So if you have outdoor plans on the day before the 4th, on the 3rd day of July, if you will, most of the daylight hours should be all right. It's towards evening that thunderstorm chances will increase. This front, then, will make for some tricky forecasting Wednesday night, and especially into the 4th of July on Thursday. Of course, the holiday has to be kind of a tricky forecast, and the reason why it's tricky is this front's going to stall and then eventually lift back north as a warm front, probably Thursday night into Friday. But where does it stall? That'll be the all-important question for our forecast on the 4th, on Thursday. Right now, indications are it stalls far enough to the south that we'll get away with a pretty decent 4th of July. I don't think it's bright and sunny like it was today, but with a mix of sun and clouds, pretty seasonable weather, temperatures in the mid-80s. If this front, though, were to stall 100 miles, even 75 miles a little farther to the north than currently projected, we might have, a few raindrops to contend with on Thursday. Right now, our forecast is fairly optimistic on Thursday because the modeling has been fairly consistent in wanting to stall this front down closer to the Ohio River. But it's not going to take much of a northward budge to increase rain chances on Thursday. We think there are higher likelihoods or possibilities of rain Thursday night and into the day on Friday with the approach, I should say, of the next system. As it stands right now, this is the day 3 severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center, and they have a level 2 slight risk of severe weather in places like Dayton and Cincinnati, up to about Columbus and Mansfield. I think that's generally the right idea. A rowdy late-day storm can't be ruled out around here, even though I think the chances of severe weather are looking pretty low for the time being. The dew points are going to come up, though. It's going to be pretty muggy at the end of the week. Next cold front, Friday night, first thing Saturday morning. I think this dew point on Saturday will probably be fairly elevated in the morning with somewhat of a decrease in the afternoon. We're not going to see any sort of refreshing air mass like the one we have overhead right now again anytime real soon. So it's going to stay largely fairly muggy into early next week. But again, the 4th of July is coming up on Thursday. Recent 4ths have all been warmer than the average each of the last 5 years. Our average high on the 4th of July is about 82, 83. We did 85 with a fair amount of precipitation recorded on the 4th of July last year. We flirted with 90 in 2022 and back in 2019 and even 2020 as well. The hottest 4th of July on record back in 1949, it was 96 degrees. In 1967, the high was just 65. We'll have more to say about the 4th of July forecast over the next couple of days. Make it a great rest of your Monday night. Thank you for watching this July 1st edition of Weather for Weather Geeks.